All right, so why don't we jump right into what's happening? We can start with, no, we can't really start with Google removing the negative Robinhood reviews. So users were review bombing. To be clear, this was probably the most justified review bombing of all time. Like, this was not bots. This was
Yeah.
actual
Well,
users. Well, okay, there were probably, okay, there may have been bots, but those bots were created by real people.
and there was a very large, very significant amount of real people that were very upset.
Yes, but we can't really start with that without giving some of the context here. So if you have been living under a rock for the
Yeah, what the
entirety
heck?
of this week, um, small-time traders have been pumping up the price of GameStop stock, and it's risen over 1,000% in the last few weeks. And the impact of this is that enormous hedge funds have been forced to take losses due to their shorting of the stock. If you're not familiar with what shorting a stock means, I am not qualified to come up with like a perfect, super concise definition on my own.
The official definition by MarketWatch is
Yes.
shorting or short selling is when an investor borrows shares and immediately sells them, hoping he can scoop them up later at a lower price, return them to the lender, and pocket the difference. But shorting is much riskier than buying stocks or what's known as taking a long position.
So basically, in a nutshell, what it means is
You're
if
betting they'll fail.
Luke had some company, Floatplane, let's say, for example, and I thought Floatplane was a giant piece of shit and completely doomed. What I would do is I would say, all right, Luke, your stock is worth $1 per share. I'm going to buy 1,000 shares for $1,000. So I buy them immediately. I buy them and then I immediately sell them. So I have like bought something for $1,000 and now I have my $1,000 back. And the goal, but I borrowed the money. So I borrowed the money from, let's say, Yvonne. I borrow $1,000 and then I buy the shares and I immediately sell the shares. So then what my goal is to wait it out while Floatplane plummets to the ground, or water, as it were, while Floatplane plummets to the water. And then I take my $1,000 that I borrowed, and what I want to do is, as the shares go down, I want to buy them back at a lower price, repay Yvonne, who I borrowed money from, and keep the profit. Okay, so I return the shares to Yvonne. I keep the difference between the $1,000 that I spent initially and what's left over, and I have made money for basically doing absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't. Okay. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm going to try this one more time. You borrow shares, not money. Okay? Borrow shares, sell them. So you've got this money you didn't earn. Then you effectively want to buy back the shares for less and then return the shares and keep the extra money. That's how it works. And it's like, there's a reason that this is convoluted, and normal people who don't play around with this stuff all day, every day, do not do that. Yes.
like us.
And
And
don't think
little
about things
preamble.
that way. Yes.
Don't take any investment advice
Yeah,
or any ideas or even probably any thoughts from this stream. Neither of us have any idea what we're doing.
exactly.
But
People are like, that's a horrible explanation. Okay. All right. We'll try one
it
more
probably
time.
is.
We'll try one
You're
more
betting
time.
on that company to fail,
Wait,
and if they fail, you make money.
people are still correcting stuff
If
I
they
already
don't fail,
corrected. So I don't think they know what they're talking about. So the point is, you're betting on it to fail. This is not an investment. This is a bet that the stock will go down and that you can make money by borrowing the stock and hoping that you can buy it back at a lower price and pocket the difference. That's what you're doing. There. That's the fast explanation. So, what happens is if a large hedge fund shorts a stock like GameStop, to the tune of millions of dollars potentially, what can happen is if that stock goes up at some point, part of the agreement when you short a stock is that you have to buy the shares back eventually. And so when you're shorting the stock, what you can do is either the stock goes down and you sit and watch your money just roll in, and you decide when's the right time to pull the trigger when you think it's bottomed out, and you pull your money out and you're like, woohoo, I am profiting off of everyone else's loss. Good job me. I made, tens of millions of dollars or $100 million or whatever. Or what happens is the stock starts to go up. Now that's bad if you're a short seller, because as the stock goes up, you still have to buy back those shares you borrowed. And if you have to buy them back at a higher price, well, guess what? You have to actually contribute more money than what you got in the first place. So what Wall Street Bets is doing is they're essentially saying, you know what? Hedge funds. Like, why does this mechanism even exist? I don't necessarily agree with Elon Musk about everything, but he put this pretty well. Where's his tweet about this? You can't sell houses you don't own. I mean, horses too. You can't sell horses you don't own, unless you're pre-selling an unborn foal. Then you could sell a horse you don't own. But anyway, you can't sell cars you don't own, unless you're taking pre-orders. I mean, kind of the same thing. But you can sell stock that you don't own.
You can also sell houses that weren't built yet.
Yeah, that's true. You actually can do that. Whatever. His point still stands. Why can you sell stock that you don't actually own? You should only invest in a company because you actually believe in the underlying business. At least that's sort of the conventional advice. Over the last couple of weeks, things have gotten pretty darn crazy.
And again, there was a comment talking about how I love how every creator and podcast is trying to explain stocks right now. Yeah, and maybe we're not doing the greatest job of it, but we're trying to get people that haven't seen this somewhat up to speed, so we can talk about some of the other parts of this.
Yeah.
I have heard from some people that shorting exists to try to recorrect the stock market. The problem is that it's not being used in the way, it's not being used for the reason it was originally created, if that makes sense. People are now abusing the tool to super tank companies with just massive amounts of weight in order to abuse that to make tons of profit. They're not using it to recorrect the market.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And when they're targeting smaller stocks, to be clear, large companies get shorted too. Apple gets shorted, Tesla gets shorted. But when they target a relatively small company that's got a low market cap, shorting is open to an incredible amount of abuse. Because what you can do is you can heavily short it, and then you can manipulate it and force it to bomb, and then you can reap a whole bunch of reward for basically doing nothing. It's abusive. And the funniest thing about all of this is that the hedge fund managers who are so upset about what Wall Street Bets is doing, saying it's abusive, are literally doing that. So anyway, GameStop was one of the most heavily shorted companies on Wall Street. And what has happened since Wall Street Bets decided to begin this crusade is they have actually, and it's so funny that Robinhood, so that's the kind of, no fees? I forget what the fees are. I think Robinhood's mostly American. Wealthsimple is kind of the Canadian equivalent of Robinhood.
Yeah. I don't think Robinhood, commission-free structure.
Commission-free structure, there you go. So Robinhood, ironically, since they appear to not have actually intended this, has participated directly in the redistribution of wealth from the very, very rich who didn't earn it to, I don't know necessarily about the poor, but definitely some poor and some medium income and some high income.
Some people that YOLO'd there, and again, don't take stock advice from us. We have no idea what we're talking about, et cetera, et cetera. But there are some people that somehow found success that were poor and just hard YOLO'd their $600 stimulus checks. Like that did happen. It's a bit of a meme that's going around. It did happen to some people. I suspect the main winners in this are not poor people.
Probably not.
I suspect the main winners on this were people with a lot of liquid funds that they could throw at things and not worry about if they lost, and were on top of this and saw where this was going and invested in it and made tons. I suspect that's the majority of the profit that happened. But still, there's a bunch of average people around that have made quite a bit of money off of this. So
yeah, so
cool.
that I consider to be a pretty darn good thing. So
yes,
one user, Deep Value, had an investment that peaked at over 33 million after making an initial YOLO investment of $50,000, and he or she is currently somewhat of a role model for the Wall Street Bet subreddit, garnering intense praise and rallying the troops to hold their shares, forcing short stocking firms to buy back the stock at insane prices. Because the thing is, the longer you hold and the greater it rises, the more pressure these hedge funds are under to like cut their losses at some point. Like if they think they can wait it out, then they'll wait it out, because the reality of it is GameStop is not coming back to the forefront of US retail. That's not a thing that's happening.
Yeah.
But they can only borrow those shares for so long, and they can only expose themselves to so much risk. So the whole thing is very tactical. And what I'm going to say is, don't take any of my advice, okay? No. Take the advice of the community there that has played this absolutely perfectly. So I'm not going to say, yeah.
Or don't, because it's still super YOLO-y.
Yeah, apparently it's a guy. He got interviewed recently and it peaked at over 50 million. So we're basically just saying, hey, apparently he cashed 9.5 million of it. So there you go. Someone with $50,000 to invest in something like this, probably not exactly, the poor that Robinhood had in mind, but
yeah.
Yes. Okay. So here's one of the other things that puts pressure on the hedge funds. They're also charged interest on what they borrowed. Apparently the interest is currently at 11 billion US dollars, because the more the stock goes to the moon, the heavier the interest is. That kind of makes sense. So, and the people they borrow the shares from can force them to return at any time. So these are all mechanisms that I'm not super familiar with, because I have never been tempted at any point in my life to short a stock. It's just not anything to do with what I want to do.